These are assembly instructions for my pop-up bridge wedding card. So I'm going to start with my card base. My card is a 5x7 and it's a tri-fold card. So I have one rectangle with a score line in the center, and then I have another one with two score lines at the bottom, and I folded down on both the score lines. So I'm putting glue from that bottom score line to the edge of the tab, and the bottom one creates the tab that's going to connect my two panels. And then I'm gluing my panel in. I want the cut edge of my longer panel to be right along the score line of that tab. So next I have my decorative panel. This is 65-pound cardstock only because it was the color that I wanted, but normally I would use 80-pound cardstock. So I've downloaded some digital paper and printed it on 80-pound Cricut cardstock, and that's going to be the layer that's on top. I have 3 panels like this that I'm going to glue onto the 3 panels of my card, trying to center them as much as possible. So now that I've decorated the 3 panels inside my card, I'm going to work on the bridge, or the pop-up element. I have the back section of the bridge and the front section of the bridge, and the cardstock that I used is identical front or back. This is some shimmer paper from Michaels. So I've got the front of the bridge with the little gap, and I'm just going to glue these 2 pieces together. This is just to make them a little sturdier because this is only 65-pound cardstock. And then I have the back of the bridge, so it doesn't have that cut out in the center. I'm gluing those 2 pieces together as well. And then I have the pieces for my lamps. For the pillars for them, I'm just doubling them up as well. And then I have the decorated part of the lanterns. Now this is on a cardstock base. For the gold on my lanterns, I've used this textured metallic vinyl. So for the interior of the card, I've used the gold and the brown. So there's 6 sheets, and those are 2 of the colors that are included. And these are the 4 other colors. So the black, silver, a different type of gold, a more yellowy gold, and then a copper. I'm putting glue on the underside of one of my lanterns, gluing it to the top of my post, making sure those edges are nice and even. I'm gonna flip it over and do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to glue down my lantern pieces on the second one as well. So next I have the mechanisms for my pop-up. So I've got 3 of them that are the same size and 2 of them that are shorter and narrower. So I'm just folding down on all the score lines for all of them. So for all 6 of them, I'm just folding that end tab over, putting glue all over it, bringing the other end to the score line on my tab and gluing it flat. And then I'm popping up my mechanism, and I'm just folding it in both directions like so. So I'm just repeating that with all 6 of them. All right, so I have the 2 smaller ones, and then I have the 4 that are slightly larger. I'm taking the front of my bridge, and I'm going to take one of the little pop-ups that I've created. The rectangle on the top and bottom here are slightly larger than the rectangles on the sides. So I'm putting glue all over one of the sides. I'm taking my bridge piece. I want the bottom of my rectangle to be right along the bottom of my bridge piece, and I want the sides to be nice and even. And I'm going to do the same thing on the right hand side of the front of my bridge, just gluing my little pop-up right to the side. So next I'm going to take one of my pillar pieces. I'm putting glue just on the bottom part, and I'm gluing it to the other side of the mechanism that I've just glued in. So the bottom is flush with the score line, and it's more or less centered. I want this as straight as possible. And I'm doing that on the other side as well. Next, I'm going to take my 2 other mechanisms. Again, the tops are larger, the sides are smaller. I'm putting glue on the smaller sides. I'm matching up my mechanism at the back. So I've got my little pillar sandwiched between 2 mechanism pieces. I'm trying to glue this one in so that it's even on the sides and top and bottom with the first one. So now I'm doing that on the right hand side as well. So for the bride and groom, I have my base piece, which is cut out of 110-pound cardstock, and so are the base pieces for the mirror images of the couple. This is for an Indian wedding. This bride specifically is wearing a peachy color. Now I was looking everywhere for a nice peach color, and I wanted it to be vinyl because of these little tiny pieces. So thankfully I have some of this new Cricut vinyl. The color is guava pink, but it looks pretty peachy to me. The gold is foil craft board, and the white is glitter cardstock. This image is not in the file because I created it in Inkscape and then I uploaded it to Design Space. So once you upload something to Design Space, you can no longer share the file. So what I've done instead is I've included a picture of a bride and groom in the file itself. I'm putting glue on the underside of one of my decorated pieces and I'm matching it up with the base layer. And then I'm turning my piece over and then gluing down the second decorated piece, which is a mirror image of the first. So I have those two pop-up mechanisms and I'm putting glue on one of the small sides. I have a little stem here from underneath my bride and groom, and I'm just gluing that little piece down to my mechanism. Then I have my final mechanism piece. I've put glue on one side of it and I'm matching it up with the first one that I've glued in place, but on the other side. So I've sandwiched the couple in between my pop-up mechanisms, and I'm just making sure that they're nice and even and straight. So I have the front part of my bridge face down on my mat, and I placed it on my mat so that either side is right on the line. And then I'm going to take the bride and groom piece, and then I'm putting glue on that little square at the bottom, so from the score line to the edge. And then I'm flipping it over so my glue is facing down on my craft mat, and then I'm positioning that little square so that it's centered on my bridge. So I want it centered horizontally, and I want the bottom of my mechanism to be close to the bottom of the arc of my bridge. So I'm looking at the back of my bridge piece and I am flattening all my mechanism pieces, and I'm putting glue on the very last rectangle on all three of them. So I'm positioning the bottom of my bridge on the score line on both sides and then pressing down in the middle too, and that should correspond with the center of my bridge piece as well. So I'm just going to decorate the front of my bridge with some more of that textured metallic vinyl, trying to center this as best I can. I put my transfer tape on my jeans a few times and to remove some of the stickiness. So now I'm putting that same image on the back. So now that I've decorated this, I realized I made a little mistake. I forgot to include this piece of acetate. I'm adhering red line tape to the top of my acetate piece, but on both sides. So I've got it on one side, I'm going to flip it over and I'm putting it on the other side, but just at the top. And then I am removing the liner. Then I am gluing this in between my two mechanism pieces here. So when you are gluing your bride and groom together, this should have gone in between the layers for the bride and groom. And the purpose for this is that when you pop it up, it'll pop up the bride and groom. So when you're assembling the piece with the bride and groom, you need to glue this piece of acetate on that little square that's below the bride and groom. So next I have these pieces of foam tape, and I'm just gluing them down just below the score line on my mechanism on both the front and on the back. So I've cut these all to size. I have my card base with the double score line at the top, the single score line here at the bottom, and that's where I'm putting my mechanism. I'm removing the liner on my foam tape on all four pieces of foam tape, and then I'm positioning my bridge piece on that score line. I want there to be the same amount on the left and on the right hand side, and then I'm raising up both sides. So I've closed my card, and then when I open it, my bridge pops up like so. And then I have my panel with the rings and the names on it. I've already adhered my names to the panel. I've used that brown textured metallic vinyl. And then I have score lines on this panel that are going to help me position my ring pieces. So I'm dry fitting them first. And so now I'm just going to glue them down. And I've used holographic cardstock for my diamond. And then I'm gluing my panel down to an offset layer. And I'm putting glue on the underside of all of it and just gluing that in place. And then I have my little celebrate. So I've used the same textured metallic vinyl as for the names, and it's on the same cardstock as well. I'm just gluing that down. I'm just gluing that there. This card is going to be passed around the office and be signed by many people, so I'm making a little card for everybody to be able to sign. So this is my little booklet. I have the cover. I've just folded down on the score line in the center, and it has 3 little holes in it. And these are my pages, and I'm folding down on the score lines for all 3 of them as well. And I have about 24 inches of embroidery floss. I'm just using a tapestry needle to make this a little easier on me. I am putting my pages inside the cover, and I am lining up the 3 holes on all layers, and then I am inserting my needle in the hole that's in the center, bringing it up in the hole that's on the left, and I'm leaving a bit of a tail here, and then I'm lowering my needle in that center hole a second time. Then I'm bringing my needle up in the hole that's on the right hand side, and then I'm slipping my needle underneath this part of my embroidery floss, and then I'm going to make a knot and then make a bow, and then I'm snipping off the excess, and then I'm going to make my envelope. Now I've already folded down on the 4 score lines. I'm going to flip it over so that I'm looking at the right side of my envelope. I've already applied some of that gold textured metallic vinyl. I'm adhering this to my envelope. So I'm flipping my envelope over, and my booklet goes in here, and I'm just putting a little bit of glue on the points on either side of my envelope, folding the right side over. Then I'm putting glue on the bottom panel, not right against the edge because it overlaps a little, and then along the edges on the bottom, and then gluing the bottom of my envelope in place. So next I'm using some 3/8 of an inch Velcro dots. Taking one of my Velcro dots, I'm positioning it at the point of my envelope, and then I'm taking the other half of it, I'm laying it on top, then I am removing the adhesive cover, and then I am closing my envelope, and then I'm using my Cricut tool to go in there, and I'm separating the layers of my Velcro dots, applying a little pressure to make sure that they stay in place. Then I'm adhering another Velcro dot here, one here, and a third one here. Then each one gets matched up with its other half. And I'm grabbing my card base, and I'm trying to center my envelope on the panel as much as I can. And again, I'm going in with my Cricut tool and separating my Velcro dots. And then I'm applying extra pressure to make sure that they stay put. So that's the interior of my card done. Now I have to work on the exterior. I'm starting with my cover panel. My cover panel has a heart that is scored into the center of it. So that's where I'm going to position my center image. Next, I have some filigree that I'm going to adhere around that heart, around that image. So I've cut some of my filigree out on permanent vinyl. So this is the guava pink that I used for the inside of my card. I've also used more of that textured metallic vinyl for the other filigree. So I have my previously used piece of transfer tape, so it's not too sticky as to not rip my cardstock. And I'm just going to adhere my filigree down onto my card. No rhyme or reason, just filling in the exterior of the card. So now that I've adhered my guava pink, I'm going to adhere my gold. Okay, so now I have the 3 layers for my heart, which is my center image, and I have the congratulations, which again, I've cut in more of that textured metallic vinyl. I'm adhering the sentiment down. So then I'm stacking up my 3 layers. These 2 layers are 65-pound shimmer cardstock. The gold layer is foil craft board. So next I have the flowers for my card, and I want to give them a little bit of dimension. I have this stylus with a rounded end. It's actually a cake decorating tool. And then I have this foam mat. You could probably use a thick piece of craft foam or a mouse pad if you don't have one of these. And I'm just starting from the center of my flower and then drawing tiny circles on every petal. So I've cut this out of Cricut Value cardstock. I have leaves, and I've cut them out of foil cardstock. So I'm putting glue in the center of the darker flower, and then positioning the lighter flower on top, and I want the petals of the lighter flower to cover the gap in the flower below. I'm doing that for both of them. So I have some half pearl embellishments, and I'm putting a little bit of glue in the center of my flowers, just gluing my half pearls down to the center panel. So I have my decorated panel with my 2 different types of vinyl, and then I have my 3 layers with my sentiment. I decided to glue a row of pearls around the perimeter of my heart shape, and that's going to be glued down within the score lines that are on my card. I'm going to tuck some leaves underneath my flowers like so, and I'm just going to glue this down pretty much as you see here. So this is the front of my card. And I'm laying my card down on my mat, and I'm putting a little tick mark on the center of my card. I'm going to flip it over, and I am going to put another tick mark on the back of my card. I'm taking a piece of red line tape and I'm just centering it over that tick mark. I'm flipping my card, doing the same thing on the front. So my red line tape doesn't go all the way to the edge because my next layer of cardstock doesn't go right to the edge either. Then I have 2 pieces of ribbon. This is just ribbon from the dollar store, and I've taken some everyday iron-on and I've ironed on their names. And I'm removing the liner on my red line tape on the cover. I'm gluing down one end and then putting red line tape on top. I'm going to flip my card over and I'm going to do the same thing at the back. So I've got the butterfly out of the same foil cardstock as the leaves. And then I have a second layer on top that's the same color as my flower. I'm putting a little piece of red line tape in the middle, and then I'm placing my purple layer on top, and then I'm folding the purple layer up just a little bit. And then I'm putting some red line tape on the underside of my butterfly, and I'm just gluing that to my card. Then I'm putting glue on the underside of that panel, and I'm gluing it down to my peach panel. My peach panel has some filigree at the bottom. And then I'm removing the liner on my red line tape, and then I'm putting glue on the underside of the larger panel and gluing it to the cover. And then I'm going to flip my card over, and I'm being very careful not to flatten my card too much. Then I have 2 more layers to glue down to the back and cover up the ribbon on this piece. There's 1 more panel to cover, and I'm going to cover it with 2 layers, but this time with the filigree upwards.